to Canal 13, the program E&E, Exploring Otherness in Azerbaijan. Today we have a very, very special guest with us, the wife of the current U.S. Ambassador, Mrs. Zeyno Baran, who has agreed to come and speak to us about living in Azerbaijan, as well as her book, Citizen Islam, which is a wonderful, wonderful book. I enjoyed it tremendously. So, let's begin. First, Ms. Zeyno, can you tell us what are the big differences between life in Azerbaijan, life in America, and life in Turkey? Because you're in a very unique position to discuss all three places.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to your program. I think well, we loved our time in Azerbaijan, the 11 months we've been here, because people are so warm and welcoming, and the issues that both my husband and I have worked on have been really fascinating.
Excellent.
As far as life, the one thing that I can think of that's similar between at least Baku and Istanbul is the horrendous traffic, which becomes part of our a huge part of our daily lives, because we spend a lot of time sitting in car and enjoying the beautiful city in Baku. I think here I would say we've had a very pleasant time with going to, as far as I'm concerned, going to parks or restaurants, and it just feels very safe and calm, and we hardly ever worry about security issues. Although you would say, as an ambassador, of course, my husband has security, but that's to me feels almost like a pro forma. But we feel much safer in Azerbaijan than anywhere else. And I would say, as far as hard work and entertainment, I don't really feel that much of a difference living here versus living in Washington or Istanbul. So for me, there was not a major adjustment that I had to make. I could find everything that I was used to in Washington or Istanbul in this place. And in that context, I think not enough people know about Azerbaijan outside in America or Europe, in many places, and don't realize that this place has really advanced in the last 20 years since independence.
Certainly, I absolutely agree with you. It's tragic, really, how little people in the West know about this place. So my second question, and it's a bit pro forma, but I'm very curious. How have you found being the ambassador's wife? I mean, how has that changed the way that you live? You mentioned security earlier. Are there any other big differences?
For me, not really, because I guess I didn't really want to change my life. I still continue to do what I was doing, more or less. Because we have a 1.5-year-old baby now, and when we came, she was much younger, of course. I was intending to spend more time with my daughter, so it wasn't necessarily the fact that I was an ambassador's wife, but the fact that I was a mother of a young child that was different for me. But I didn't change anything in my life, except that we have many functions that we go in the evenings, and maybe sometimes 4 nights or 5 nights out of 7 we're out, and that gets a little bit tiring, but it's also really interesting, and we've met very interesting people and have participated in very stimulating conversations. And I guess I would say because I chose to continue my life normally and not think of myself as ambassador's wife, I haven't felt any limitations, and I've just very much enjoyed, as I said earlier, the warmth that we received from people.
That's wonderful. That sounds great. So I'm curious, what event or festival or what have you found to be the most enjoyable? Is there a particular opera that you saw, a particular music festival that you thought was just incredibly well done?
Well, we've attended a number of them. For me, the very interesting new exploration was Mugam jazz. I was familiar with Mugam, but not as much, and it was a great pleasure to learn more about it. But Mugam jazz was such a creative and fantastic concept that I think would really appeal to Westerners, and that was the most interesting new discovery for me. And then we went to operas and some music, not as much as we wanted to, because as I said, our nights were often out with dinners or receptions, and then the few nights that we would have home, we wanted to stay with our daughter. But we tried to take advantage as much as possible of the rich cultural life in Azerbaijan.
Thank you. What are the reasons that Bryza is being recalled? And if you can't talk about it, I completely understand. Don't worry at all.
Well, I can give you the sort of the general explanation of the process. When an ambassador is appointed by the president, the U.S. Senate has to approve that ambassador. Last year, we did not get that approval because 2 senators objected to him coming here, and then President then appointed him during the recess when the Congress went into break in winter. That position is only for 1 year, and during that 1 year, Senate has to confirm him. Our understanding is that those 2 senators still did not change their position, and in a way, to me, it's sad because I believe that as ambassador, he has done a very good job, even improving and bringing U.S.-Azerbaijani relations even closer. And it's sad that what he has done here didn't seem to have had much of an impact in terms of how the senators looked at his position. And the reason they have given before was that he was going to be maybe too close to Azerbaijan, although of course you would want an ambassador to the country to be close to that country, but there is mostly opposition from one particular Armenian diaspora group, and I was brought into the picture as well, and my Turkish origin was a factor, unfortunately. So it's a number of factors, but we're grateful that President Obama sent us here, and we are again grateful for the 11 months. Very short. We had many more projects that we wanted to accomplish. We launched several great initiatives, and we'll remain connected to Azerbaijan.
That's wonderful, and I really am sorry. The state of American political discourse right now is horrid, just horrid. So in any case, you mentioned this a bit earlier. How do you think Azerbaijan has developed both intellectually and physically, and maybe more importantly spiritually, since the fall of the Soviet Union? I mean, I realize you have a very small frame of personal reference to work with, but any thoughts you have would be valuable on that.
Well, actually, I have first come to Azerbaijan in '98. And
really?
In my work as a researcher on this region, I've seen Azerbaijan develop incredibly fast, and not in a revolutionary but evolutionary way. And I think that maybe sometimes, for some people it feels slower, and people may want to go faster, but in a way that's much more stable. And life is not does not get too chaotic. What I have seen in all those years is energy. Azerbaijan's rich oil and gas resources were used effectively, both in making Azerbaijan strategically relevant in its neighborhood and to America and Europe, and also how if you look at the money used in country, inside country, from building schools to roads to new businesses. This is a country that has learned the lesson of the oil curse that many other oil-rich countries have experienced, and decided consciously that it's not going to let its oil wealth become a burden, but in fact benefit its population. And Azerbaijan's economy has been one of the fastest growing economies in the world in the past several years, and when there's so much difficulty economically, including in America, this country has done relatively well. And I've seen in the last 20 years, if I just focus on since independence, people becoming more proud of their country, proud of their heritage, and wanting to really be becoming much more outspoken, and both changing things inside country, because of course every country is a work in progress. Even in America, democracy is a work in progress, and certainly in Azerbaijan in 20 years it's a work in progress. But there's a vibrant civil society, and people are they know that Azerbaijan belongs with the Euro-Atlantic community, while also being proud of its Turkic and Islamic heritage, and spiritually really trying to fuse all those, and bringing out the best of its eastern and western, as well as southern and northern aspects, from influence from cultural influence from ancient Iranian as well as Russian the culture. It's so rich here that I don't even know where to begin when people ask me about Azerbaijan. So I can go on and on, but I think this country is really at a very exciting point in its development, and it's really going to take off from here on, and become probably in a wide region one of the most exciting places, including for tourism as well as investment, and of course in terms of its own people's lives getting better. With my husband, we've traveled in many parts of Azerbaijan, and we've seen that clearly there's still poverty, but there are huge improvements in every part of this country.
No, I would agree with you, and one of the most interesting things about this place is it really is, and it's been said ad nauseum and it's almost trite now, but it is the crossroads of the worlds, and I hope that it can eventually come up with a beautiful synthesis of all those influences. So my last question is a bit less philosophical. What do you think of Eurovision? How will that impact Azerbaijan and the people who live here and the society itself?
I think I had tears in my eyes when Azerbaijan won Eurovision. We were in Gabala, and we watched it, and I was so excited, and we were all dancing in our bedroom. We were watching it with my husband and little baby, and we're all dancing when Azerbaijan won. I think it's already many more people in Europe know of a country called Azerbaijan. So it's put Azerbaijan really on the world map, and it's going to, and that has a plus and a minus, because many more people will want to travel to Azerbaijan, not just during the few days of the Eurovision contest, but before, maybe weeks before, and so there's going to be, I think, challenge. I go back to what I said before, managing the traffic. When there are so many people coming into Baku and then the rest of Azerbaijan in a short period of time. There are a lot of hotels now that are built, but I don't know if there will be enough rooms for everybody, so that's going to be a challenge. And of course, preparing for this huge event in a relatively short time is going to be a challenge, but Azerbaijan can do it, and its work is going fast in terms of the venue and everything. And I think it will be a very interesting experience for Azerbaijanis to have people from very different cultural backgrounds from Europe come and then interact with them. And I think it will open up Azerbaijan in ways that we can't really imagine at this point.
I absolutely agree, and I hope that that's the case. I think it will be a breath of fresh air for both a very great deal of Europeans to see Azerbaijan and for Azerbaijanis to see Europeans. So with luck, that's exactly how it will be. So on to your book specifically, I have a couple questions about that. My first is, you make a distinction very, very early on that's critical, that I think is brilliant, but I was wondering if you could elaborate for our viewers. What do you mean by Islam and Islamism, and how does that exactly play itself out?
Thank you very much. Well, I wanted to make that distinction, and I wanted to write this book because after the horrible attacks of September 11, 2001, many people in America and Europe started to wonder, what is going on, because some of these terrorists have been conducting their activities saying they do this because this is what their religion wants them to do. And so many well-intentioned people, not anti-Islam people, but well-intentioned people were saying, is there a problem with Islam? Why do Muslim people do that? And in my work, I've done a lot of interaction with government officials and different aspects of society, and I understood that they didn't really understand the difference between Islam, the religion, which is, a set of values and rituals and piety, versus Islamism, which is based on, which takes the religion of Islam but turns it into a political ideology, one that says secular law has to be replaced by God's law, and God's law defined by human beings at a particular point in time, because Islamic law called Sharia has been written down as a legal doctrine in the 8th and 9th and at the latest 10th centuries. And so when people say that we want to have God's law, they are not thinking or talking about understanding of what God's message is, or Islam in 21st century norms and understandings, but in very old ways. And they have a political agenda of replacing, as I said, current secular laws with religious laws, and then insist that only their form of understanding Islam is appropriate. So that mentality then gets people into radicalism, hatred, and some people choose violence. So what I try to explain to my audience, mostly in the West, that you need to differentiate between Muslims and Islamists, and Islam and Islamism. Some people who have that political agenda, even if they don't use violence, are not going to be the citizens that we like to see, that are abiding by democratic norms. And when they are given some openings, like allowing freedom of speech or freedom of expression, they will take advantage of these openings and try to harm democracy. And I also describe and explain in the book why Western tolerance of the intolerance of these Islamists has actually hurt our societies and create more polarization.
No, and in that case, I absolutely agree with you. The true horror of speaking for God, especially politically, is it gives you carte blanche justification to do whatever you want, which is absolute power corrupts absolutely, as they say. So, going from this, one section I found thoroughly enjoying in your book was your discussion of women's role in both Islam and Islamism, a symbol that's become pretty huge in this city especially has been the veil or the hijab. You have an interesting discussion of that. I was wondering if you could elaborate on where that practice comes from, the difference between a woman choosing to wear it, being forced to wear it, and sort of being conditioned into thinking she's choosing to wear it, and just explain that process, please.
Sure, sure. The veil is not particularly Islamic. There were, in Judaism or Christianity, women used to wear the veil, but now in mainstream Jewish and Christian societies, they don't. It's a cultural form of dress form, and at the time before Islam, and then when Islam was first coming to Arabia, it was a status symbol of the elite women and women who wanted to differentiate themselves from others, and also a form of some women to protect themselves against male aggression. In the Quran, there are only two places where there's a mention of female covering, and it doesn't say cover your face or cover your hair. It talks about modesty, and it talks about the importance of covering certain parts that I think most of us do cover when we go outside the house. But it became a tradition, and some people may want to cover and choose to live that way, but when you look at the Quran and the history, then I would say, and this is not just me saying, but many theologians, many historians saying that if we just focus on the head covering, it's a part of the tradition, and it's not essential part of Islam as the in terms of the essence of what God wants us to be as human beings or pious people. The head cover issue or female covering unfortunately became part of a tool of these Islamists to make a statement. And this is only mostly in the last 30, 40 years. Before 30, 40 years, all these parts of the world where there are Muslims, you didn't see that many head covering, you didn't see that many different forms of female covering. It increased in the last 30, 40 years as Islamism as a political movement spread. Starting with the Iranian Revolution, and as a result of the spread of these ideas in Afghanistan during Soviet invasion, and some of the Saudi Wahhabi indoctrination globally. So it's a 30-year, 40-year process. And as a result of this Islamist thinking, now they want to say that our women are different, and our women cover as opposed to non-Muslim women. So they're trying to separate Muslims from non-Muslims, and then starting with women, because women are the most basic and maybe most important part of social engineering process. If you change the woman, how she thinks of herself as her role or as her identity, then she will influence her children thinking about life, the rest of the family. And so they start by conditioning the women that headscarf is an absolute must. And in that context, then, when women getting those kind of messages, then I don't think that there's really the choice that women can make. So some women may say, I choose to cover myself, but it's unclear how much choice they really have, because it's unclear how much freedom they have to do their own research, do their own thinking, because of the social pressure or because of the self-declared religious experts and sheikhs and mullahs saying, I am better qualified than you to determine. And I tell you that you have to, wear the headscarf. And in general, it's unfortunate that women become a sort of a major tool of the Islamists, as well as in how the West looks at Muslim societies and Muslim women, and it's just a shame that a little piece of clothing becomes the main passionate discussion point for many Muslims and non-Muslims. Whereas as a Muslim, I wish that Muslim societies would be much more passionately interested in discussing new scientific discoveries to cure some illnesses or deal with many of the world's problems. But instead, because of the strong influence of Islamism right now in mainstream Islam, this issue, as you said, including where you are and in every part of the world, including in America and everywhere, it's become a very emotional and difficult issue.
It's sad that something like Islam or Christianity would spend so much time on these questions that seem so far from the actual point of the message. I was wondering, you mentioned it briefly earlier. Could you elaborate, because you mentioned this in your book as well, on the role that Saudi Arabia is playing in all of this? Could you discuss that a bit, please?
Sure. Islamism is a modern phenomenon. It's really a 20th century phenomenon, but it goes back to 19th century when there was a fairly radical theologian called Ibn Wahhab. He was so radical in his interpretation of Islam that his family didn't want to have anything to do with him, and he was often considered by the theologians as very extreme, and so he took refuge with a tribal leader called bin Saud at the time, and that Saud family would later turn into, after many decades, it became the Saudi Arabia. But what happened was Wahhab's extreme approach to Islam, which basically said anybody who doesn't think like him should be killed, helped that tribal leader Saud, who wanted to conquer more land in Arabia. So the two of them joined forces, and through using Wahhab's extremist ideas, conquered many lands, converted people by force to Islam, and then among the places they captured were Islam's two holiest cities, Mecca and Medina, which are in current Saudi Arabia. And when they were able to be basically controlling those cities, then they, and later on when Saudi Arabia was formed, then Wahhabism became the state religion of Saudi Arabia. And having those two holiest places as part of their lands, and they were able to say, we represent true Islam. And they used a lot of oil money that came after the 70s particularly, to spread their understanding, so the Wahhabi understanding of extreme Islam globally. In many parts of the world where Islam was a fusion of local traditions and a tolerant understanding, that was all wiped away with the extremism of Wahhabism, and it now reached a point that today many people don't even understand that they learn Wahhabism, and they think that's just a classical traditional Islam. And many Wahhabis today, because some people understand that Wahhabism is fairly extreme, they don't call themselves the Wahhabi or the movement Wahhabism, but they say Salafi. It's basically a word game, because Salafism means the people who lived during the time of Prophet Muhammad. So saying that we're not following Wahhab, but we're being the true Muslims. But that also is is not correct, because again, if the true Muslim is not stuck in the 7th century, I'm sure if the Prophet Muhammad were to live now, he would have a completely different lifestyle than some of these people live and want to have other members of society to live.
Thank you so much for that insightful discussion. And again, that book is Citizen Islam. It's available on Amazon, and I know you can get it shipped here, so really think about picking that up. So my last questions then are going to be much more political and regional. First, I wanted to know, how is Azerbaijan perceived in Turkey? What would you say?
Well, in Turkey, we talk about Azerbaijan not being known well in the West, but even many people in Turkey don't know much about Azerbaijan. It's considered to be, of course, it's much smaller than Turkey, and it's considered to be like a sort of a lesser developed parts of Turkey, and there's not much of understanding that it's actually, yes, it's Turkic and has Muslim heritage, but it's also an independent and very different country, and the language is very similar. But Azerbaijani Turkish is more, in a way, I think, older Turkish than the Turkish used in Turkey, and many Turks find it strange, when they hear Azerbaijani. So I think it's not appreciated enough, even though it's surprising, because I think many Azerbaijanis, because they watch Turkish television, have a much better sense of Turkey than Turks do of Azerbaijan.
No, I would agree with you wholeheartedly there. One thing I've heard from many of my Azerbaijani friends is the idea that it is bir millet but iki dovlet. So they're certainly very, very into the idea of being part of Turkey, or a part of the greater Turkic culture. The next question I have, and this is sort of the gadfly of the whole region, both with Turkey and Azerbaijan in different ways, how do you think Armenia will end up shaping this region? What do you think the consequences for both Turkey and Azerbaijan are ultimately going to be for a peace solution, for some sort of rapprochement?
Well, I think, for Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, as well as Georgia, it's important that there is a peaceful resolution of the conflict in Karabakh, and the border opening with Turkey. But the two of them have to happen simultaneously. I think it was a mistake to try to rush the border opening between Turkey and Armenia without finding a solution to the Karabakh issue. Everything is, whether we like it or not, is interconnected. And I think much more than Turkey and Azerbaijan, Armenia needs a sort of the solution, because it's really stuck between having to be close to Iran and Russia, and I think part of the reason that Armenian diaspora is so influential is that many people leave Armenia because living conditions are better outside Armenia. When you look at Azerbaijan and, of course, Turkey, even without improved relations with Armenia, those two countries are flourishing and developing and integrated with globally. But Armenia is not able to enjoy the same chances. So, but I think it will require American and Russian and some key European leaders, and as well as maybe Turkish ones, to really decide once and for all that the status quo is unacceptable, and leaving things frozen, because Karabakh is more or less a frozen conflict, although of course there are some shootings and horrible tragic killings that happen from time to time, but for compared to some of the acute conflicts we have in the world right now, the world community thinks that this is more or less a frozen conflict. So, but I think it's a huge mistake to leave this issue unresolved. There's increasing tension globally, with Iran, and we need an urgent solution in regional opening and regional integration in this part of the world, and so that this whole region can develop in a much more stable, predictable way.
No, I think that everyone would agree with that, and the status quo is frankly horrific here. So my last question, and it's perhaps the most light question, is how do you hope Azerbaijan will be in 20 years? What would be the ideal outcome for Azerbaijan in say a 20-year period?
Well, the ideal outcome is that maybe it will be economically, it's sort of maybe a cliche, but it will be the Dubai of the region, where many people come here for investment, and it's sort of like the safe haven, and as you also mentioned, truly a crossroads of different civilizations, and it's appreciated as such. Society has taken advantage of the energy resources, but also in also new technologies, and agriculturally it's developed into a real agriculturally rich society, and that can turn it into business, and partly because of this is my area of interest, is that maybe Azerbaijan shows the world how to be a Muslim country that is living in 21st century, according to 21st century norms. It's always very exciting to me when I think that this country was the first secular republic in the Islamic world, and the ideas that the intellectuals and the religious communities and the business people were discussing in the 1900s made Azerbaijan, that successful, although short-lived, but successful first secular republic. And I think similarly, I'm expecting and hoping and believing that from Azerbaijan some creative ideas will come that will be helpful to the whole world about integrating into Islam humanism and 21st century norms, where women are equal members of society, where instead of hatred or sense of victimhood, there is tolerance and love and kindness, and I see no reason why Azerbaijan won't be that successful bright star in 20 years.
I truly could not think of a better fate. As is almost never talked about these days, sadly, Azerbaijan gave the right to women to vote before the US and before France. So I really truly hope Azerbaijan plays a huge role in the future development of the world itself. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed by us, and we are grateful. It's been wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for the great questions, and thank you for giving me the chance to talk with you today. Thank you.
Good luck with your move. I realize it's a nightmarish time.
It is, yes, it is. And we were spending the last couple days just saying goodbye to our favorite places, and one thing that really brought tears to my eyes yesterday is I took my daughter to one of our favorite parks, and just when we're leaving, she looked back and she waved and she said, "Bye bye park, bye bye park." And that made me sad.
Understandably. It sounds like it really has become a home for you, so yaxshi yol, and hopefully you will come back soon.
Sağ olun, sağ olun. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye.